Hello and welcome to what stream is this again? I almost said Handelabra Live, which is wrong, and then I almost said One Deck Galaxy, which is the game. No, this is Dolphin's Dive, the weekly strategically minded Handelabra stream hosted by Logic Dolphin. Handelabra believes in civil rights for everyone and in being as inclusive as possible, so any comments or activity actively work against those goals are not welcome and will not be tolerated. Handelabra products include Sentinels of the Multiverse, Sentinels of Earth Prime, Bottom of the Ninth, One Deck Dungeon, One Deck Galaxy, Aeon's End, Spirit Island, and Horizons of Spirit Island, all available on Steam, iOS, and Android devices with the exception of One Deck Galaxy, which is in early access, and One Deck Dungeon, which is also available on Switch. You can find more information on those games at handelabra.com. Yeah, here we are playing One Deck Galaxy. I took off last week because I was stressed. I'm doing better this week, which is good. But we are here to play One Deck Galaxy, but there is an update here, which, at least for the beta build, I don't know if it's public yet. There is, I don't think it's public actually. There is a tutorial and there is a rulebook now available. If you watched Handelabra Live on Tuesday, then you saw John fumble through the tutorial while also doing QA, and thereby breaking the tutorial and also the entire game apparently. Or at least that build is, which might be this build, we'll see, might not work. I don't just read the rulebook, because when I start new games on Handelabra streams, I tend to read the rulebook out loud, spending an hour or 2 hours figuring out the rules before I play my first game. Now this one's a little bit weird because I played One Deck Galaxy a lot already, but I did read the rulebook before playing One Deck Dungeon. I read the rulebook before learning Spirit Island, also Aeon's End, also Bottom of the Ninth. So every time I start a new Handelabra product, I read the rulebook in depth on stream, and then I play the games. But I've already played a lot of games on stream already, and I'm very familiar with the rules. So I'm just going to read the rulebook without necessarily needing to understand what's going on here, but it is also for your benefit. Plus, we'll also do a little bit proofreading, I suppose, to see what is written correctly and also incorrectly, as it were. Introduction. You lead a fledgling civilization making your first steps to visit the many stars your people have been looking at for eons. Your people must colonize worlds, develop technology, build a worthy fleet, and of course, do a copious amount of science. I almost said research. I don't know why. I can't read, apparently. You're not alone out there, though. Standing in your way is an adversary who will make your efforts more difficult at every turn. If you can overcome their obstacles while building up your own infrastructure, you'll be able to form a federation that will bring prosperity to your corner of the galaxy. Object of the game, One Deck Galaxy. That's it. That's all the object of the game is. Now, One Deck Galaxy is a cooperative game with many moving parts. Each turn the adversary will act, the discovery zone will refresh, you'll get to roll dice and take actions, and then the results of those actions will occur. Your goal is to achieve victory against the adversary and form a stable federation. And here are the homeworlds, I believe. Technically, our societies, not societies, the species who live on homeworlds, that word. All right, next page. New game setup. This is the screen you see when you start a new game. We've seen it many times before, but we see the homeworld on the top left, society next to it, also space for a second player if so desired, with options for the other homeworlds and societies below. Adversaries selected to the top right, and the list of adversaries beneath it, and the instructions for the adversary that is currently selected at the bottom right. And the difficulty level specified here is normal. I love how that's like the only other thing to note is difficulty level. But I guess everything else is self-explanatory, I suppose. You select a homeworld and a society to pair together. So for instance, the Timtillawinks, whose homeworld is Cullicut, and the society Explorers. And this reveals how many dice you have of each color. You start with 2 techs. Your starting resource is water. You have the milestone on your homeworld, as well as 3 milestones on your society. You have a tech on your homeworld, as well as a tech on your society that tends to level up based on your federation level, as well as an extra rule that's attached to your society. And I guess I just did that without reading. Each homeworld will provide a starting set of dice, 1 tech, and 1 potential milestone. The society adds additional milestones and a special tech that improves as your federation grows. Select an adversary. Each adversary has a star rating indicating its difficulty from 1 to 5, as well as an alternative version that is harder. So base Nibelwubers is difficulty 2, but advanced, I guess, is difficulty 4. What are the differences between these two? Well, you kind of have to understand a little bit about how the Nibelwubers work, but you can see that on the base level, their starting dice selection is 1 energy, 1 materials, and 1 diplomacy. But with the advanced, they have 1 energy, 1 materials, 1 diplomacy, and 1 tech star. So they will start by accumulating tech stars right out the gate. At the base level, they will only hoard dice if they are rolled to be 3 or higher, but on advanced, it's 2 or higher, as well as every time you confront the adversary, it's actually 1 less benefit. And the numbers on this are actually the exact same. Okay, cool. And one other thing is that when you spend time at the start of each turn, you spend 1 extra time if you're in advanced. So it's 1 time on normal, 2 time on advanced. Yay. Physical/digital differences. One Deck Galaxy was designed first as a tabletop game experience with physical cards, dice, etc. The digital version follows all the same rules as the physical game, but handles those things for you. Influence cards that would be tucked under locations, encounters, the starbase, or the adversary are represented by progress bars or counters, and the game keeps tracks of where those cards are for you. Some milestones will be automatically claimed if they have no cost. Others will cause your Federation logo to blink to be activated. That sounds weird. Others will cause your Federation logo to blink to be activated. Feels like that could be phrased differently. I know what they mean, but I know one in particular is like you have to spend colonies that amount to at least 1 energy, 1 material, and 1 diplomacy for whatever society it is, and you have to activate that manually. So basically what that says is that when it's possible to do that, your Federation logo will blink. You can then click on that and activate that milestone. But that's weird. Okay. Your civilization. Your would-be Federation brings with a homeworld and society cards. Sorry. Your would-be Federation begins with the homeworld society cards. I thought it said brings with the homeworld. Okay. I can't read. As influence spreads to new locations around the galaxy, colonies and techs will be added to your homeworld. When milestones are completed, the Federation level track will show your progress. So yeah, as we see, this now explains that the resources on the left, although technically these are the resources in the terminology of the game. These are the resources that level up techs. These are just the dice that you collect at the start of each turn, and as well as the number of tech stars, but okay. Techs down here, in this particular example, you have Probe Armada, I suppose, as an extra thing. Or no, sorry, that's based off of the explorers here. Yeah, and then the milestones listed on the yeah. So this, okay, I see what's going on here. So you click on the Federation level, it reveals this. So this is like the in-game display. The left side of the homeworld area indicates the dice and discs you'll receive each turn. The symbols represent dice, such as energy, materials, and diplomacy, with stars for tech discs. Homeworlds and societies each have a tech, and during play, additional techs will be obtained through additional cards. Resources improve some of your techs and can be relevant for some milestones and adversaries. Your homeworld starts with some, and colonies and techs that are claimed throughout the game will provide more. Yeah, so this is what the resources are. So this is a bit off. This is technically the resources down here. The crystals, fuel, water, and plants. Each society has a special rule that is always in effect. Often these relate to the society's special tech. Your Federation level starts at 1. As it increases, so will the power of your society's special tech and your ability to confront the adversary. Your homeworld and society each have milestones you can complete by meeting certain conditions or doing a specific thing. When completed, a milestone will receive a Federation disc. Yep. So they have this displayed here where this Federation disc is over here. And the results with no cards in the Discovery Zone is a completed milestone. Weirdly, you're still at Federation level 1, which is incorrect. You'd be at 2 because you start at 1 plus the number of milestones you've completed. But whatever. Note to John, or also we're on page 4 of 3. Note to whoever, that is incorrect. 5 of 3. Is that because... Oh, I see. Hit concepts, is it correct? No. Oh, is it 4 of 32? Oh, is that what's going on? Is it bleeding over? Yeah, that's what's going on. It's because my display is apparently not the one that was tested, even though it's a standard 1080p display. So it's page 4 of 32. All right. Hello, Nezu, and welcome. We are reading the rulebook that is now available in the beta build. Even though we know how to play this game, of course. Milestones. Each game begins with 4 milestones, 1 for the homeworld and 3 for the society. Each completed milestone will raise your Federation level to a maximum of 5. There are 2 types of milestones, passive and active. Passive milestones list the requirement you must satisfy. Active milestones list an action you must take, such as exile colonies. Milestones can be completed at any time, even outside the action phase. When completed, a milestone will receive a Federation disc. Yeah, it says it can be completed at any time, although some of these do have a specific time frame, such as end the results phase with no cards in the discovery zone. And it says it's right here. Never mind. Most passive milestones can be completed anytime. Okay, this feels like it needs some work. Because this is contradictory. Milestones can be completed at any time, but most passive milestones can be completed at any time. Sure. Some are prefaced with end of turn or end the results phase with, meaning they can only be completed at that moment. In a 2-player game, a player's milestones cannot be completed by using dice or discs from the other player's pool, nor by using the other player's colonies or techs. Doesn't specify how 2-player works yet, but okay. I guess that will be discussed in the gameplay portion. But it is important to note that, of course. Starbase. Starbase holds your civilizations, fleets, and science, and provides you with a place to put dice that aren't useful elsewhere in order to convert them into fleets or science. As the Starbase is upgraded, the conversion rates will improve and you'll get more Starbase discs each turn, which allow you to spend fleets and science to cover rings on encounter, location, and confrontation cards. This is kind of obscure right now, exactly what that means, but the Starbase discs are based on your class. You have a number of Starbase discs based on your current class, and Starbase discs are what are used as a counter for, like, you know, encounters and locations and adversary confrontations for the fleets and science that you've spent. But yeah, Starbase is where dice are spent to accumulate fleets and science. Importantly, it provides a means for you to consume dice that aren't useful elsewhere. Reminder, the general supply is limited. There cannot be more dice or discs in play than exist in the game. Okay. I'm trying to figure out exactly what this relates. There cannot be more dice or discs in play than exist in the game. Okay. I mean, there is one adversary where you can exile Starbase discs. What about the dice? Is this about the spending science for Ultra Tech dice? Because otherwise this is a bit obscure. I don't know. I don't think it immediately relates to what's on the page, frankly. Adversaries. The adversary you choose to face has a significant impact on how the game is played. Each adversary has its own set of additional rules, and your gameplay strategy may need to be adjusted depending on which adversary you are facing. And then it goes through the words on there. Okay. Yeah, so when you're fighting the Nibelwoobers, the escalate rule, the Nibelwoobers gather dice and tech stars for their thing icons and roll them. Gather ultra techs in place of missing energy, material, diplomacy dice. Each die that is value X or higher and all gathered tech stars are added to the horde. Okay. That's just for the Nibelwoobers. That's not actually the rulebook thing. Escalate. Encounters and adversary rules use this keyword. Each adversary's reference card describes what happens when an escalate is triggered. So, in particular, encounters that happen on the main discovery zone always do an escalate after they accumulate 3 influence, and so every adversary needs to have an indication as to what escalate means for them. So the Neeboober's escalate is up here. The Hungry Nebula's escalate is to add 2 influence to the adversary. And the Optimization Calibrator's escalate is to roll a die and store it in the cache, ignoring restrictions. And the other 2 adversaries have escalates as well that do different things. But in particular, every single adversary needs to indicate what escalate does, even if they're not going to escalate directly themselves, although every adversary will, basically. Overwhelm. Each adversary has their own condition for how they can overwhelm you. Being overwhelmed ends the game in defeat unless you can exile an adversary disc you've claimed via confronting the adversary. And yep, that is true. Overwhelm is basically a game over condition. I think the thing that's missing though is that you are also overwhelmed if an adversary event would be revealed, but you've already exhausted them all. That's not indicated here, but when you empty the draw pile, you reveal an adversary event. But if you've done this 5 times already and you've revealed all the adversary events and there are none, then you are overwhelmed. So every adversary has that innately. But other adversaries also have additional conditions for overwhelm, such as the Neebelwoobers that say that you are overwhelmed if the number of colonies they have is at least twice as many as your current Federation level. So that's an additional loss condition for that adversary. The Galaxy deck. The Galaxy deck contains the places and things you'll discover out in the depths of space. There are 2 types of cards in the Galaxy deck, locations and encounters. Locations are places around the galaxy viable for study, development, and even colonization. Each location has 2 different ways to gain influence. Once you gain enough influence, likely over several turns, you can claim the card. So, other than the influence progress bar, this is actually the same display as is on the physical card. You have the, in this case, location, which has a nice graphic on it to indicate that it's a planet. The location rule that's particular to that location, 2 progress rows that have restrictions, and if you pass the restrictions during the results phase, you gain that many influence. The number of influence you need is indicated on the top left of the card, and yeah, so the influence progress is a digital implementation of what the face down cards next to the card would be to track the influence. They haven't actually talked about influence yet, but influence is basically a face down card. And once you've accumulated 7 influence at the end of the results phase, you get to claim this card as a colony or as a tech. And so if you claim as a colony in the physical game, you put this underneath your character card, just displaying these dice, or well, the rewards here, the energy and the diplomacy and the tech star. You display that, adding on to your display. If you claim it as a tech, you also put this underneath, but you hide everything above that, and you gain this as a tech. In addition, there is a resource type, which belongs to either the colony or the tech, so regardless of what you claim, this will be the resource that is added to your Federation. And in the event that you don't claim this for either the colony or the tech, but you instead gain it for science, which you do not by gaining influence, but through the starbase, then this is the amount of science this card is worth, and you can spend it for whatever resources you need. Not resource, but things. Cool. Influence progress bars are visual representation of the influence progress on a location card. For example, when a card's influence cost is 5 and the card has acquired 3 influence, the progress bar shows that 3 out of the 5 required influence are present. Ba-bam. Influence progress bars represent the cards that would be tucked under a location. In the physical game, the back of each card can show 1 or 2 influence, so several cards are required to be tucked. The progress bar indicates how many cards are tucked and how many are still required. It's important to note that even though we'd have this progress bar indicating the face down cards, they are still face down cards next to this card in the game. because that's a really important thing to note, that cards underneath this card are not in the deck or in the discard. So if you do reshuffle your draw pile, the cards that are underneath whatever locations in the game will not be in the new draw pile, and that's going to influence how many draws you get into. You get a reshuffle, or whether you get a particular location or encounter back in the draw pile, etc. Encounters are other forces around the galaxy that aren't necessarily adversaries, but if left unchecked will cause you trouble. Unlike locations, their requirements must be completed all at once. Because of this, they do not have an influence cost. So this is actually incorrect. They do not have an influence cost. Oh, by the way, influence cost. No, this is definitely not influence cost. This is wrong. This is wrong. No, this is entirely different what this is. Anyway, it's the same sort of thing. You have that as a red backdrop to indicate that it is an encounter. The nice little visual for what this is. This is the influence threshold that once reached, the escalate effect occurs. The completion requirements must all be filled in one single round in order to claim this as a colony or as attack. Same way as for a location. The science value, you cannot claim this for science as you would for a colony. This is only if this were to escalate. And it doesn't indicate here yet, but the influence that is gained on this is at the same pace as the adversary. So when the adversary gains 1 influence, then the encounter gains 1 influence. That's not 100% true. Technically, there are other ways for the adversary to gain influence. But at the start of each round, there is part of the adversary phase is that you add influence to encounters in play. So they gain influence, and once they reach 3 influence or whatever this number is, technically this number could be anything, but in practice it's always 3, at least with the current deck. Then the adversary will escalate, following whatever rules for escalate there is. Then you discard all the influence cards underneath this adversary, and you gain this as science. And that's going to be explained on another page, but that's how you get the science there. Aha! Influence! Influence is a core mechanic of One Deck Galaxy. In physical One Deck Galaxy, influence is represented by face-down cards tucked under their destination. The card backs have a circle or a double circle linked on opposite edges, so one card represents 1 to 2 influence. In the digital game, this tucking is done for you, but again, the physical cards are still there. Or not cards are still there. They're not physical cards, but you know what I mean. While represented by cards in tabletop, influence is represented visually along the top edges of Galaxy cards in the digital version. So yeah, influence required, 3 out of 5. Influence represents a variety of different concepts. Locations gain influence after you fill their rows, indicating your progress toward completing the card and claiming a colony or tech. Encounters gain influence each turn during the adversary phase, if enough accumulate and escalate effect occurs. Adversaries gain influence each turn. Each adversary uses influence in different ways, explained by their individual rules. This influence is shown at the top of the adversary area. In the starbase, fleets are represented by influence. Fleets of starships, I guess that's flavor text, are represented by influence. And cards stored face up in the science area of the starbase represent science, which is not influence at all, but I guess this is a similar idea. These can be viewed by clicking the science icon. Managing the number of influence cards in play is important. Each time the deck is reshuffled, an adversary event will trigger. Okay. This is important, but it's not immediately clear why that's important. It's more that when you reshuffle your deck, your draw pile comes from the cards that are only in the discard pile, so any cards that are currently being used for influence are not put into the new draw pile. So if you have a really thin reshuffle, then the upcoming adversary event will be faster. Not the current one, but the subsequent one. But yeah, influence, I guess thematically, is our means of convincing whatever location that we're the good guys and that they should work for us. We can add them as a colony, which means that I guess they work for us, or they give us science in terms of attack, or they just give us temporary science if we were to study them or probe them. Probe. 2-player rules. Each player has their own pool for dice and tokens. One player's text cannot affect the other player's dice or tokens unless the tech refers to a die from any pool. Both players may place dice in the same large box or starbase row together to fill it. Each player can provide one die to create a black die. It can be placed in either player's pool. So yeah, these are basically the same rules as for One Deck Dungeon. When dice or tokens are gained due to a non-tech effect, such as calibrate, adversary events, or rules, they can be added to either pool or split between both players' pools as desired. Calibrate. So when you put a die into calibrate, you can actually give it to the other player? Is that what that means? Because calibrate to me is when you're using fleets to increase or reduce a die. I don't feel like that's correct. Adversary events and rules, yeah. So like the optimization calibrator, you can every 4 turns you claim dice from the horde, and so I guess those can go to either pool. The split is like, if you know, when you gain 3 dice from that, you can have one player gain 1 and the other gain 2 if so desired, etc. For either player to be able to fill an adversary confrontation row, both players must have the required federation level. This has not been actually talked about yet, but when you're confronting the adversary, the first confrontation is free. Subsequent confrontations require you to be at a minimum federation level. So the second confrontation requires you to be at federation level 2 or higher. The third confrontation requires you to be at federation level 3 or higher. The fourth and final requires you to be at federation level 4 or higher. And so in a 2-player game, this minimum requirement must be shared by both players, so both players need to be at federation level 2 or higher. You can't have one player ignore their federation levels and have the other player confront solo. That is not how that works. Both players may place dice in the same large box or starbase row together to fill it. Yep. Yeah, this is duplicated. this is duplicated. Okay. Milestones are specific to each player's pool, colonies, and techs and are not shared. If both players are overwhelmed at the same time, only one adversary token is exiled to avoid defeat. I'm trying to think, because I've never actually played 2-player in One Deck Galaxy. How would both players be overwhelmed? I suppose, like against the Nebelwoobers, the loss condition is if the number of colonies is at least twice as many as the current federation level, it's possible for both players to fail that condition. So it count as like 2 overwhelms in a sense, but you'd only spend 1 federation token or 1 adversary token. So, okay, fair enough. Victory/defeat. To achieve victory, the last adversary token must be removed from the adversary, revealing the win space. This ends the game immediately and means you fought off the threat while forming a stable federation. If you are overwhelmed by the adversary, the game ends in defeat. You can avoid being overwhelmed by exiling an adversary disc from your starbase. Yep. So I think this has been addressed before, but yep. The adversary has 2 colonies. Oh, sorry, this is for the Nebelwoobers. This is indicating a possible loss. There's at least twice as many as the Federation level, so you are overwhelmed. Oh, no. Gameplay introduction. Each turn in One Deck Galaxy is shared cooperatively between all players and consists of 4 phases. The adversary phase, the discover phase, the action phase, the results phase. Action is the one that's really the longest one. Discover is really short. So the adversary phase. You resolve adversary events, which are the cards that are revealed when you empty the draw pile before you reshuffle it. The adversary and encounters gain influence, and time passes. I think technically time passes first, by the way. I think. Discover. Cards from the Galaxy deck are added face up into the discovery zone until there are 4 cards in play. That's it. Action phase. All dice are rolled, and tech and starbase discs are used for a variety of purposes. to advance your federation and oppose the adversary. That is a very, very vague description of what is going on. Basically, this is where you're doing all the dice moving and decision making about what you can do with your current dice. Then when you're done is the results phase. All completed areas are resolved and all dice and tech starbase discs are returned to the supply. Like cleanup. Adversary. The adversary phase represents the inevitable march of time. The galaxy won't wait forever for you to build a federation. So yeah, adversary events. If there are any pending events, they are revealed and executed one at a time. If a new pending event is added during this process due to a reshuffle, it is set aside and will not be revealed until the next turn. Each adversary's events cards affect the game in unique ways. When a pending adversary event is revealed, its instructions are immediately followed. Many events have a lasting effect. But yeah, adversary events, basically you can reveal them over the course of the game by accidentally emptying the deck and having to do a reshuffle. And that reveals an adversary event that is set aside. And it is not revealed until the start of the adversary phase. So, yeah, though that's when the events occur. Then time passes. You either spend 1 or 2 cards from the Galaxy deck and you discard them. 1 for basic difficulty, 2 for advanced difficulty. I think technically you look to the adversary card to see how many cards to discard, but with the current adversaries, it's just basic is 1, advanced is 2. I don't know if basic is the right word. Adversary influence, 1 influence is added to the adversary. Encounter influence, 1 influence is added to each encounter currently in play, missing a period. Resolve encounters. For each encounter that reaches its influence threshold, an escalate action is performed, then all influence there is discarded and the encounter is studied, which means you face it face down. Okay, cool. And I guess this is just a display of the naval warriors showing that they're escalating. Cool. All right. Discover phase. During each discover phase, you will explore new spots around the galaxy. The example below shows 3 locations and an encounter on the bottom right. These face-up cards from the Galaxy deck form an area of play called the Discovery Zone. Cards are drawn from the Galaxy deck and placed into the Discovery Zone face up until there are 4 total cards there. If there are already 4 cards in the Discovery Zone, then no action is taken during the Discovery phase. But I believe the Naval Woobers, if there are already 4 cards face up when you're in the Discover phase, then they gain an extra influence, I think. So it's an extra incentive to pay attention to what's going on here. And then the action phase. Such a big phase. We start with the Gather. Your homeworld and colonies provide you with dice and tech discs each turn. These dice and discs form your pool. For example, the elements start with 3 energy, 2 materials, 5 diplomacy, and 2 tech stars. Tech discs, I guess. And they have 1 colony that's providing them with 1 diplomacy and 1 tech disc. So they will roll at the start of the action phase 3 energy dice, 2 materials dice, and 6 diplomacy dice. And they will take 3 tech discs from the supply to form their pool for the turn. Now, it's worth noting that there are only 12 tech discs in the supply, which is very unlikely for you to ever hit because that requires you to have like colonies that give you so many tech discs and for you to have so many colonies. So you're limited to 12, basically. There are, however, adversaries that will exile tech discs, in which case there will be fewer in the supply. And so it'd be far easier for you to hit that. So like, for instance, if you were to exile 9 tech discs and there would be only 3 in the supply, but you have 4 tech discs in your, colonies, then you would only be able to take 3 from the supply since there are only 3. If there are not enough dice or discs in the supply, you will receive as many as are available. Dice that are exiled or stored on other cards due to adversary or society rules are not available to be taken. In addition, your starbase has 1 or more spaces for starbase discs based on its current class. Each of those spaces are filled with a starbase disc. Each of what spaces? I know what they're talking about, but in addition, your starbase has 1 or more spaces for starbase discs. Each of those spaces. Oh, I see. It's saying that the spaces on the starbase are filled with starbase discs, and this is part of the... Okay, I got it. Because of the action phase gathering, you put the starbase discs in those spaces at this moment. Okay. In a 2-player game, each player's pool is kept separate. If there are not enough dice or discs in the supply, the players will choose how to allocate them. And so it says here, select a civilization to gain dice. I guess the way that this is kind of read is that like you're out of energy dice, and so you're gonna have the elements gain the energy dice first and the fleecy second. But this kind of reads as if you can decide to give 3 energy dice to one and 4 to the other, as long as it's less than their max. But I don't know. I've never really hit that limit. I also don't play 2-player, so. All right, step 2, act. Actions can be done in any order, and types of actions can be repeated as long as you have dice or discs to use for them. In a 2-player game, either player may act at any time, but must always use their own pool's dice and discs. An action must be fully completed before proceeding to the next. So the action types: place dice or discs, use attack, calibrate, combine dice, return dice. So, what do these mean? Placing dice and discs. During the action phase, one of the more important goals is to place dice and discs on cards. This will allow you to progress in the following ways. Filling a row on a location will make progress towards claiming a colony or tech. Filling a whole encounter will complete it, allowing you to claim a colony or tech. Filling rows in the starbase or adding dice to the research lab will allow you to gain fleets or science. Filling a confrontation row will let you remove an adversary disc, taking a step towards victory. So yeah, placing dice. It's literally just place dice. And you can, like, placing dice is literally just place a dice. So like on previous pages, like, you must fully complete this action before proceeding to the next. This is kind of a binary thing. You either place the die or you haven't. There's not like you can do an action while you're placing a die, right? To place a die in a box, it must be the correct color. After rolling the dice, drag dice from your pool to the desired dice boxes. Boxes come in 2 sizes, small and wide. We have a small yellow 5 and a wide pink 8. It's funny to say yellow and pink. Small energy 5 and 8 materials 8. A small box is filled by exactly 1 die that is equal to or higher than the number displayed. A wide box is filled by 1 or more dice with total value equal to or higher than the number shown. These dice must all be placed at the same time. That said, it's not like you can just put, like, you can totally put a 3 in here and then do other things while this 3 is in here and then come back and then put a 5 in there later to fill it out. I don't know why it says they must all be placed at the same time, but I guess it's basically, I think that what this is basically saying is that you can't put a 3 in here on one round and then later, like on the next round, after the next adversary phase, discover phase, and then on the action phase, you're like, well, I put 3 in here in the past, I'm gonna put 5 more in here now. You know, it's not retroactive. Black Ultratech dice can be used to fill boxes of any color. A wide box can be filled by a mixture of matching and black dice. So, yep, they're the wildcard dice. Dice of any color can be placed in a gray box. Usually you see these on the adversary, but there are some locations that have these as well. The starbase has rows of gray boxes with symbols on them. So they're small boxes, so they can only have 1 die. But in addition, they have these special rules. A box with any can be filled with any die. The linked boxes with an equal sign must all be filled by the same value die. And any number of dice with any values can be placed in the research lab and used to earn science. The research lab is actually beneath this. But unlike the other things, it's not really a colored thing. You just put dice in there. Placing starbase discs, science, and fleet costs. In addition to dice boxes, some card areas contain blue rings with a fleet or science cost inside. To place a starbase disc on a ring, click on the ring. The fleet or science cost will be paid, and a starbase disc will move from the starbase to the ring. You must have enough fleet or science to pay for it, and you must have a starbase disc available in your starbase. Enough said. Location rules. Each location has its own special rule, many of which govern dice and disc placement. Restrictions affect the entire card. For example, all dice here must have different values, meaning you could not place a 5 in both the top and bottom row. Yep. These are, those are all the things for placing dice, so. Yep. Also, the adversary confrontation card. The adversary confrontation card has two sides depicting two different ways in which you can confront your adversary. This card can be freely flipped over at any time as long as no dice or discs are on it. Each row directly corresponds to the adversary disc to its left, and you can only fill the highest row that is still attached to one. Some rows may have a minimum Federation level listed. All players must have reached that level or higher to fill boxes and rings there. Yep, so you know that. And alright, that's it for placing dice. The next one on the list was calibrate. Nope, it was use the tech. We're going to talk about calibrating now. Screw you. Action phase, dice modification. Calibrate. The bottom of the starbase shows how you can calibrate dice in your pool by spending fleets or science. Calibrate with fleets. Each fleet in the starbase can be used to increase or decrease the value of a die by 1. If desired, drag a die you want to increase or decrease to the fleet calibration box in the starbase. Then click on the -1 or +1 buttons to adjust the die accordingly. When the die is set to the desired value, drag it out of the fleet calibrator box to confirm. Fleets will not be paid until the die is removed. You may do this as often as you wish as long as you have the necessary fleets to pay the cost. And calibrate with science. Aha, so this is what the calibrate thing was saying earlier. 3 science in the starbase can be spent in exchange for 1 Ultratech die. To do this, click on the science calibrator button and then confirm which science cards you wish to spend. There must be at least 3 science in the starbase for this button to be active. So yeah, when I was earlier saying I don't understand calibrating, the +1 -1 is apparently adding dice. I guess this is technically calibrating as well, although I've never thought of it as calibrating. I've thought of it as gaining dice. But this does gain an Ultratech die, and so when you spend 3 science to gain an Ultratech die, either player and 2 player may claim the die before they roll it. Combine dice. You can create a black Ultratech die by spending any 2 dice from your pool. To do so, drag and drop any 2 dice into the Ultratech combiner boxes. Those 2 dice will be returned to the supply and you will obtain an Ultratech die. The Ultratech die's value will be equal to the lower of the 2 spent dice. For example, spending an Energy 4 and Diplomacy 3 will give you an Ultratech 3 because 3 is the lower of the 2. And in 2-player mode, each player can return 1 die. In this case, you choose which player gains the new die. Return dice. You can return 1 or more dice from your pool to the supply. This is useful if you wish to use attack or combine dice and there aren't enough dice in the supply. To do so, drag a die back to the supply in the top left of the screen. So is that... Okay. They didn't talk about text at all. It's over here. Okay. Now for your long-awaited use a tech. Techs allow you to do a variety of beneficial things. To use a tech, click on a tech to activate it. You cannot use a tech if you have no tech discs in your pool, and you cannot use an already activated tech, one that already has a tech disc on it. Then you execute the effects of the tech. For example, mining platform offers a choice of either gaining a materials 6 or spending 2 fleets to roll 2 new pink dice and 1 black die, adding them to your pool. Dynamic Factory improves as you gain matching resources, in this case fuel. You roll a new pink die and also gain materials 4 for every 2 fuel on or connected to your homeworld. Probe Armada is the Society special tech for the explorers. At the beginning of the game, you can only use the top effect, return up to 2 dice, gain that many Ultratech 3s. Once you reach Federation levels 3 and 5, you could choose to use the middle or bottom effects instead, such as return up to 3 dice, gain that many Ultratech 4s, return up to 4 dice, gain that many Ultratech 6s. Cool. End the action phase. When you have completed all the actions you wish, click the engage button at the bottom of the screen. This is just for the digital game, because otherwise you could just be like, all right, I'm done with the action phase, time to go to the results phase. After completing all available actions for the turn, your efforts are rewarded with progress in various areas. The results phase has 2 steps, resolve and reset. Step 1, resolve. All of the dice and discs you place during the action phase will now provide benefits depending on where they are placed. Each card in the discovery zone is resolved, then the starbase is resolved, and then the adversary confrontation card is resolved. So resolve location. The right side of each location card is split into 2 rows, each showing both a series of boxes and costs, and also the influence reward for completing them. For each completed row, where all the boxes and rings are filled, the influence specified at that location is added, and the dice and discs on the card are returned to the supply. If the location has enough influence to satisfy its cost, all the influence there is discarded, and you can claim the location card as a colony or as a tech. Resolve encounters. If all the boxes and rings on an encounter are filled, the dice and discs there return to the supply, any influence is discarded, and you claim the encounter card as a colony or as a tech. When claiming a location or an encounter card, you choose to acquire the card either as a colony or as a tech. To do so, click on the left-hand side of the card to gain as a colony or the bottom to gain as a tech. In a 2-player game, you also choose which player will claim the card. There is no limit to the number of colonies or techs you can acquire. This is a big difference from One Deck Dungeon, where your number of items and skills was restricted by your current level. And even at the highest level, you could only have in a single-player game like 7 items and 5 skills. But in One Deck Galaxy, you can claim as many colonies and techs as you want. However, you're kind of limited in terms of time. Like, acquiring all 40 colonies means your deck is empty and the adversary is constantly overwhelming you. So, yeah, I don't think you'll ever be able to reach that. I'm sure there's like... I wonder what the theoretical maximum is. There is certainly a maximum number you can ever claim. I guess we could have a high score as to how many colonies you claim before the game was over, but 40 is definitely not possible because like there's just not enough time. All right, so after the discovery zone, resolve the starbase. Each full row on the starbase earns fleets as indicated, and that many influence are added to the starbase. Dice from the research lab are spent to pay for 1 or more study probe actions according to the costs shown there. Launching a probe uses the top card of the deck. To launch a probe, click on the probe button. This button will only be present if you have enough science available. Studying a location uses the location card. Influence there provides a discount that is discarded. To study a location, click on the study button on the location you wish to study. A location will only have a study button if you have enough science available. So the thing to note, and I didn't understand this the very first time I played the game, back when I played it physically, is that when it says cost 3, this means 3 dice. This doesn't mean 3 pips. Like, I definitely put in like 10 pips here and I launched 3 probes. And then my first game was easy, but I screwed that up. I mean, I couldn't do 3 with this limit, but you know. So in order to launch a probe, you have to spend 3 dice to do so. To study a location, you have to spend 1 die per science that it costs, but you have a discount of 1 per influence that is on that location. Generally speaking, it's not really worth putting influence on the location if your intent is to study it, but there are techs that add influence to locations indirectly, so if you have a tech that does it, that's okay. But spending dice and fleets and science to add influence so that you have a discount on studying it later is generally not worth it. That said, there are exceptions, such as if you're trying to end the action phase with no, or end the results phase with no cards in the discovery zone for the one Tim Tillawink's milestone, then having that discount actually is pretty beneficial for being able to do it. All right. Resolve, or sorry, I didn't finish this. After all dice are resolved, the starbase can be upgraded by spending enough science to pay the upgrade cost. To do so, click the upgrade button in the starbase. This button will only be present if you have enough science available. So it's not indicated here, but like on class 1, it costs 8 science to to upgrade the starbase to class 2. At class 2, it costs 10 science to upgrade, and at class 3, it costs 12 science to upgrade. You do not have to upgrade as soon as you have enough science. I think that's also a difference from One Deck Dungeon, where you automatically leveled up if you had enough once you added experience. In this game, you will choose to upgrade whenever you so choose, and that's because you're not, like, science is not the experience, like it's analogous to experience, but it's not like set experience. You can spend science for resource costs or influence costs or whatever, or for the adversary. So there are more uses for science than just upgrading the science or upgrading starbase. And then resolve adversary confrontation. I'm skipping all over the place. If an adversary's current confrontation card row is completely covered, you have confronted the adversary. The adversary disc next to a filled row is claimed and will be moved to the starbase. An adversary disc can be spent later to avoid being overwhelmed. Removed adversary discs affect the X value for many of the adversary's events and rules. X is always the revealed number closest to the bottom of the adversary area. And I think technically this is different than what the physical rulebook says. I need to double check because I think it was forever ago, but I think it said in that rulebook that X is the highest revealed number. But there's an adversary where the highest number is actually the top one, and revealed ones go lower. And it's really clear that the intent is that the lowest number is what you're supposed to be using. So I think it was like a typo in the physical rulebook, but I don't remember if that's actually true or if I'm just misremembering. Step 2, reset. All dice and text starbase discs are returned to the supply unless a card specifies otherwise. After reset, the turn is complete. A new turn will begin with an adversary phase. Yay! We are 75% of the way done. Reshuffle. When a galaxy card needs to be drawn for any reason but the deck is empty, the top adversary event is set aside, face down, and becomes a pending event. The discard pile is shuffled. The current game action is resumed. Pending adversary events will be revealed and executed during the next adversary phase, one by one if there are multiple. Important. If there are no adversary event cards left when a reshuffle would be triggered, you are overwhelmed. So this is the overwhelmed condition that exists in every adversary. When you trigger a reshuffle, but there are no adversary event cards left, you are overwhelmed and have to spend an adversary token to not lose the game, or lose the game. Icons! Yay! Adversary symbols. X's indicate discard 1 or 2 cards in the Galaxy deck. Plus influence, add 1 influence to the adversary. Plus science, add the top card of the deck as science to the adversary. This is actually not currently implemented digitally because that is one of the 2 adversaries that is not digital yet. If there are 4 cards in the discovery zone, add 1 influence to the adversary. I think these are hopefully we'll be able to see a game. Yeah, we will definitely do a game. A lot of these things actually you don't really care about digitally because I don't think these even appear. Like, does it appear? It doesn't even appear here. And the physical Deeble Woobers card, it shows the cost here for discarding and etc. So like, or it shows you how much cards to spend for time passes and how many influence to add, but it doesn't show it there. So so this is currently not really wholly relevant. Although this one still is X. The value on the adversary card revealed by the last adversary disc removed, or the starting value if none have been removed. And then game symbols, energy, materials, diplomacy, ultratech. Not yellow, pink, blue, black, but energy, materials, diplomacy, ultratech. Tech star, although it was previously called tech discs, I guess. Current federation level, fleet, science. 1 influence, 2 influence, unlock. This wasn't really specified anywhere, but there are some locations that you cannot fill in the second row unless you filled in the first row, so it has an unlock condition. Fuel, plants, water, crystals. These are the resources. And for text that show that resource in brackets, that indicates the quantity of that resource you possess. So if it says like re-roll up to bracket fruit dice, that means you can re-roll up to how many plants you have. So if you have 3 plants, you can re-roll up to 3 dice. So that's useful information. But all of this is not actually, at least for the digital game. Tech keywords. Gain. A die from the supply is added to your pool with the specified value. Roll. Roll a die from the supply and add it to your pool. Re-roll. Roll a die from your pool and place it back into your pool. Increase, decrease, change. Take a die from your pool, adjust its value, and place it back in your pool. Exile. A card, die, or disc is out of play for the whole game. This is not discard, this is exile. This is specifically removed from the game forever. Set. Take a die from your pool, set it to the specified value, and return it to your pool. Return. The specified die or disc is put back into the supply. Discard. A card is placed in the discard pile. If instructed to discard X cards, they are discarded from the top of the deck. Resources. Some tech get better as you gain resources. A resource in brackets means the quantity of that resource you have. Hey, this is exactly the example I said 5 seconds ago. Nice. Federation level. Some techs get better as your federation level increases. If the federation icon is in the text of the tech, it is replaced with your current federation level. Cool. Civilization cards. Again, resources are indicating these, but this is actually slightly different because it's not even showing this as the resource, which is actually the resource. That is very incorrect, but we've seen this before, so don't need to go over that again. Adversary. This one is a bit weird because colonies are not actually particular to adversaries in general. They are specific to the Nibelwoobers, who use the colonies for other things. Adversary influence, adversary disc, confrontation card, sure. Location cards, yep, we've seen this before. Encounter cards, again, they don't have an influence cost. That is wrong. It's the influence threshold. Glossary. What is different from glossary and tech keywords? Adversary. The force or entity opposing the formation of your federation. If you fail and they succeed, Insula will be a very different place. Calibrate. Spend 1 fleet to increase or decrease the die by 1, or spend 3 science to roll 1 Ultratech die per 3 science spent. Civilization. Your civilization is a combination of your homeworld and society type and grows as you gain colonies and techs. Confrontation. To defeat your adversary, you must confront them 4 times. Their confrontation card has rows on it that you must fill with dice and discs to do so. Discovery Zone. The gameplay area where locations and encounters live. The Discovery Zone fills the 4 cards during the discovery phase of each turn. Encounter. Groups from around the galaxy that will cause trouble if left unchecked. If left for 3 turns, they will cause an escalate. Escalate. A special action that the adversary takes when certain conditions are met. Escalates are almost always bad for you. Fleet. Fleets are housed at your starbase. In the physical game, they're represented by tucked face-down cards. Fleets can be used to make progress on locations, encounters, confrontations, or to calibrate your dice. General Supply. The general supply is where all dice and discs reside, but not in your pool or on cards. Homeworld. The home of your civilization chosen during setup. It dictates your starting quantity of dice each turn, starting resources, a starting tech, and a milestone. Insula. The region of space detected in One Deck Galaxy and 1001 Odysseys is a distant corner of the Milky Way far from Earth. Influence. In the physical game, progress and counts of fleet's science are represented by tucked face-down cards called Influence. In the digital version, we take care of the tucking for you. Influence is represented by a circle and 2 linked circles in various places. Location. Places around the galaxy viable for study, development, and colonization. Milestone. Your civilization has 4 achievable milestones, 1 from your homeworld and 3 from your society type. Each time you achieve a milestone, your federation level will increase. Overwhelm. Each adversary has conditions for overwhelming your fledgling federation. If overwhelmed, you lose unless you can spend an already claimed adversary disc. Pool. The area for all of your active Dyson discs. In a 2-player game, each player's pool is separate. Resolve. When all the Dyson discs placed during the action phase provide benefits. Resource. Each location encounter has a resource in its bottom left corner. When gained as a colony or tech, you have access to that resource, which will improve some tech abilities. Science. Science is housed at your starbase. In the physical game, they're represented by tucked face-up cards, showing a science value between 2 and 4. Science can be used to make progress on locations, encounters, or confrontations, to upgrade your starbase, or to calibrate your dice. Society. The general theme of your civilization chosen during setup. It has a special ability, 3 milestones, and a society special tech that improves with your Federation level. Starbase. The home of your research and logistics operations. It holds your fleet, science, and starbase discs, which are used to spend fleets and science at locations, encounters, and confrontations. Dice are spent here to gain science and fleets, and upgrading the starbase improves the conversion rates. Tech. Each tech grants you some benefit and can be used by spending a tech disc. Some techs improve as your civilization gains more resources. That's it! We read it! And I marked all of my criticisms, as in I mentioned them. Sure hope that someone paid attention to what my criticisms were, because I didn't actually. Time for us to play a game. And as I am wont to do, I will randomly generate this game. I want to generate 2 random integers between 1 and 5. The numbers are 3 and 5. So Plum Scientists. And I also want a number between 1 and 3 for the adversary. The number is 1. So, we have the Plumplims. Starting with 3 energy, 4 materials, 3 diplomacy, 2 tech discs, and plant. And their innate milestone is to have 16 science. And their attack, floral ingenuity, move any number of influence from one location to another. They are on the homeworld Brummagum. We're also the scientists. Their society. Their milestones have 4 activated techs, have 5 activated techs. As an action, spend 7 tech discs. But their special rule: you can use a starbase disc as a tech disc, or 2 tech discs as a starbase disc. And their tech is mobile laboratories. At base level, spend a fleet to launch a probe. At Federation level 3, you can instead spend a fleet to launch a probe or study a location. And at Federation level 5, you can spend a fleet to launch a probe and or study a location. Pretty good combination, as we do want science for... Actually, I was going to say science. Oh, sorry, yeah, it is a good combination. I was going to say this has nothing to do with text. But the mobile laboratory has gains us science, which can give us this milestone pretty easily. And with this society, we do actually want techs a little more than we want colonies, because we can actually use the starbase discs to use for techs quite frequently. So while we only start with 2 tech discs, we can activate 4 techs if we're at Starbase Class 2 by using 2 from our tech discs and 2 Starbase discs. So techs are a bit easier to use. Spending 7 tech discs, you can also use a Starbase disc for this, but this does actually require us to gain a colony because we only have 6 between the 2 and the 4. So yeah. Nibelwuber Colony Fleet. And this is kind of sized horribly because this is way far to the left of where it should be, which is over here. But yeah, the Nibelwubers, we saw this on the instructions, so are in the rulebook. So the way they work at the I don't really like how this is kind of out of order. Actually, it's not out of order. I'm just misinterpreting it. So I'll start over here. Adversary colonies. The Nibelwuber colonization fleet will amass its own colonies shown at the left of the adversary. The icons on these colonies allow them to roll dice during each escalate. At the start of the adversary phase, you are overwhelmed if the Nibelwubers have at least twice as many colonies as your Federation level. They have a horde. Dice and tokens in the horde are stored on the adversary and are not returned to the supply during the results phase. All right. Now for the extra stuff that goes with this game. The adversary phase, at the end of the adversary phase, if the adversary has 3 influence, discard 3 influence, and the Nibelwoobers gain a colony from the deck, otherwise escalate. So they will escalate very frequently. Their escalate rule, the Nibelwoobers gather dice and text discs for their energy materials, diplomacy, tech icons, and roll them. You gather Ultra Tech dice in place of missing energy materials and diplomacies. Each die that is valued X or higher and all gathered tech discs are added to their horde. So at base, they start with 1 energy, 1 material, 1 diplomacy, and they roll it, and any die that is 3 or higher will be added to the horde, which removes it from the supply and therefore affects our ability to roll stuff. And during the action phase, we can negotiate. Twice per turn, you may make a purchase from the horde. Spend either 6 science for all energy, 4 fleets for all materials, 3 influence from locations for all diplomacies, 5 tech discs for all ultra tech dice, or dice of value 20 plus for all tech discs. Half rounded up go to your pool, the rest to the supply. Dice are rolled first. And I misinterpreted this roll when I played solo. I interpreted it as roll the dice and then half of the dice go to your pool so you can make the decision as to which ones you want. No, you roll the dice after you select half rounded up. They're basically a rival federation. Yep. They are a fleet that has gone rogue. But yeah. And then the event cards over here basically add this card as its own colony, but also does an extra effect. So yeah. Okay. Let's play. Okay. Escalate. Oh, good. All 3. So they kept all of it. Excellent. Okay. So I went through that very quickly, but yeah. You can actually see the progress of each phase on the very top here. The adversary phase, they resolved the adversary events, which there were none. They gained an influence, or rather, they spent time first, technically. Then they added an influence, and then the locations gained influence, but there were none in the discovery zone. And then any encounters that are escalating will then escalate. And then they also have the special rule that at the end of the adversary phase, they will either escalate or gain a colony. And that's what the escalate was. Then the discover phase, where we come over here and we place whatever empty slots there are with the top card from the deck, which gave us 4 locations. On the action phase, we gathered 3 energy, 4 materials, 3 diplomacies, 2 tech discs, and then we rolled those dice. And now for the rest of the action phase, we can place dice, use techs, calibrate dice, combine dice, discard dice. Was that all it was? I don't remember. Okay. Now to actually play the game. So gain 16 sites. I could just get this in like 2 rounds by just using all of my dice on the research lab and like gaining dice over here. Not necessarily what I want to do. Can we confront? My diplomacy is kind of bad, as in I'll never be able to hit the 16 right now. We also can just do a probe at the expense of a fleet. Which is pretty good because a fleet is basically a previous die. Because the 2 fleets and the 3 fleets each cost 1 die, basically, 1 die per fleet. The 1 fleet over here is expensive for the time being, but once you upgrade, it's actually cheaper. It's actually, well, it's also 1 die, but basically this is spend 1 die to launch a probe versus spend 3 dice to launch a probe. So might as well do that. Especially because we want to get to the 16 science. I guess the question is there any locations we would like to maybe consider claiming? Like we could consider Hexfinity. Inversion storage is a really strong tech. Also, energy, materials, diplomacy is really strong for extra dice, but since we do want techs, inversion storage will be really nice for that. It is rather difficult to obtain, as we do have to spend either 2 fleets or 3 science per turn. We obviously don't even have enough fleets for this. At least right now. We have to have 6s as well, which is difficult. But one of the things that we do have is floral ingenuity, which means we can take influence from a different location and add it to Hexfinity. So like if we had a different way of getting to influence very easily, that would be nice. I'm not really too keen on getting 1 influence. Like 2 dice for 1 influence is pretty bad. That said, 3 science is like, what, 3 dice? I mean, I'll definitely do this though, because I do want to get Hexfinity. I like that it discarded the 3 card without asking if I wanted to discard the 4 card instead. I would never have done that, but I don't know why it didn't let me choose. So the other side of its adversary is fleet oriented. So I think we definitely want to get fleets, as fleets allow us to use mobile laboratories, and we could instead use fleets on Hexfinity. I imagine we're just gonna have to gain this over multiple turns, is what we're gonna do. Let's see. So what are the other things here? Gain fleets, launch a probe, roll a diplomacy. If you have 3 waters, re-roll any or all of your dice. So I don't really care for that tech. I do like the inversion storage. Colonies, don't care about those. Don't care about diplomacy per se. Like rapid deployment allows us to fund mobile laboratories by this and also profit 1 fleet. So maybe that's reasonable to consider. Accelerated study, we already have mobile laboratories. We don't really need to have more mobile laboratories. So we can gain this for science and this for science, I guess. I could gain 2 influence on Flutara if I so wanted. I can't because dice are not good numbers. Okay. Actually, this is a 2. I guess I don't get 3 fleets if I do that, but I can do it with different values. I can instead gain 2 fleets. And with the 3 in the research lab, I can study Chelonus. Okay. And I don't want to study that. Yeah, John said, like, I don't know why it's so important to see that this is turn 2. It's a nice effect, but turn number is not really relevant. It's a cool statistic, but I don't know that it's relevant. The Unseen. Another rapid deployment source. My roll is not good for the Unseen. My roll is not good for Hexfinity either. I'm gonna move influence to Hexfinity. I'm curious, did that actually discard another die? Or another card? I've always wondered about this. There's 26 cards in the deck, 3 in the discard. So when I move influence from here to here... Interesting. It took it from the discard. It briefly went up to 4, but then back down to 3. Interesting. I've always wondered because, like, is there ever a situation where it would change card counts, actually? I guess so. Like, if this has 3 influence and this has 3 influence, I guess that would actually be beneficial. You can move 1 influence from Flutara to Hexfinity, which puts this at 2 and puts this at 4. But that would be marked by 3 cards instead of 4 cards. So, like, you would put that card in the discard, so that would make sense. But there are ways that you would add a card, which would be like, if this has 4 and this has 4, and you move 1 influence over, I guess it's not possible to have 4. If this is 2 and 2, you spend 1 from here, putting at 1, you add it to here, which puts it at 3, so it'd have to be another influence, but you would just take it from the deck, I guess. That'd be the only way, I guess. Okay. We can't deal with the unseen this turn unless I calibrate dice, I guess, but I don't have good dice for that. I don't have 6s for Hexfinity unless I calibrate. If I calibrate, I'm not doing this, so I'm doing this because I want to do this. It locks me out of calibrating, so I can't do anything with Hexfinity this turn. Flutara. I would have to calibrate in order to do this one, which I probably don't want to do. So we could still study instead of doing anything with. We could add an influence, but it's, I don't know. I don't think it's worth spending 2 dice for 1 influence. It's kind of my weird rule of thumb where it's like, anytime you want to get 1 of a thing, if you're spending more than 1 die for it, it's not worth. I don't know if that's actually correct or not, though. I might be making that rule up. It's my rule of thumb, quote unquote. If I do this, I gain 5 fleets, and I could gain Twinso or Probe. If I gain Twins or Study Twinso, then I'm actually 1 die over, which is kind of bad. I guess I could instead gain a Federation level if I were to... Actually, no, I can't. Without... Well, I can Study Twinso and Probe, and that might get me to 16. But it depends on if I get a 4. And it's not guaranteed. If I were to go that route, I would just do this. And it would be a percentage chance that I get it. But I mean, like, as long as I don't upgrade the starbase, I will get this next turn with the mobile laboratories, most likely. And there's not really a reason to be at class, or to be at Federation level 2 anyway right now. Because I have nothing that cares about Federation levels yet. But it is something. Navy Movers are going to be gaining a colony next turn, by the way. Yeah, so let's get the fleets, as that's what's funding mobile laboratories. Two. I do not want to upgrade. So apparently I was wrong when I said mobile laboratories will level me up, because it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. They have gained Vo, which is an energy and a tech star. So they're starting to accumulate tech discs. Welp. Okay, with this roll, I can confront the adversary, or sorry, not confront, I can do the encounter. And so doing that, I can't do anything with Xfinity, nor can I actually do anything with Xfinity because my dice suck, so that's out of the question. Move the influence. Gain science. I only have 4 dice left. Rapid deployment's gonna give me lots of fleets now. So I could spend 2 dice to study Twenso. I don't want to study Flutara, but I guess I don't need Flutara now because I already have rapid deployment. I don't think you can duplicate techs. Like in one deck dungeon, you can't gain a skill that you already have. So I don't know that you can have 2 rapid deployments. So I can just study both of these, I guess. I want rapid deployment. I want study. Milestone achieved. I want study. I do not want study. We don't need the science for that anymore, so we can upgrade the starbase and upgrade again. Well, I guess we do have mobile laboratories, so yeah, we can upgrade very easily. I guess it technically was a bad cost because I spent 1 more science. Oh well. You should consider confronting at some point, I suppose. That 3 number is pretty bad. Improbitron Collector. Spend a fleet to increase 3 of your dice by any amount. Pretty nice. Getting that. We don't have 6 science right now, but also our roll would have been really good for that this turn. That sucks. Launch the probe. Yeah, so they have 3 energies now. They're gonna accumulate energies a bit more because they have more energy rolls. No dice with value 6. Must fill top row before bottom row. I could actually move the influence from Xfinity over to Chelonis if I so wanted. I can get a Xfinity to influence. I will. I have a lot of tech discs. Interesting. Well, it's because I upgraded twice. Duh. I should consider getting science for Solidarans, I suppose. Assuming I can even get that. Is there any reason to gain 1 influence? No, because I'm going to gain Xfinity next turn if I can get one of those. So at this point, I don't think it's worth doing that. So gain the fleets. And then we need stuff. Study Hemative, study Chelonis, because we don't really need those techs. That's 5 dice. The probe is now 2 dice. I probably need... Well, okay, if I... That's 2, okay. I probably want to make sure I could take this option if I want. I profit 1 fleet off of this. So I spend 2 fleets on there. I still need 1 more fleet for Solidarity, so I do want to gain some number of fleets. So 3 and 2 is 5. The probe is 2, so I can gain 2 fleets. I could also get a lot more fleets so I can blockade, I guess. I'm gonna focus on science still. We're gonna reshuffle soon. Could be bad. Do not study. That is a terrible roll. I do not like that. I do not like this roll either. I guess it's not that bad. I just have to calibrate. I can't do Hexfinity this turn, so. And 4-2. Definitely want to get as many cards back in the discard pile before. It didn't ask me again what I wanted. Is that actually a new option? Manually. Ah, it is a new option. Okay. Interesting. Resolution is 1920 by 1079. What? What? Okay. Well, it's now 1920 by 1080 now, right? Like, I fixed it. Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize that science costs were actually a button. That makes sense. It can be an annoying pop-up. I don't mind seeing it, as I like to manually choose the cards. Because I kind of do care about the cards that go into this. I want to make sure I discard as many cards as possible sometimes, but I think that was the only way to really do that effectively, really. If I hit this button, I do trigger reshuffle, so I don't want to do it just yet. All dice here must have different values. Yeah, so I can't get the 2 influence on there. Ice cream, I definitely don't have enough diplomacies. So Xfinity, I'm not claiming this turn. I can gain 1 influence on Flutara, but it's not going to give me Hexfinity anyway. I could consider moving to 7 influence to claim Ice Cream. Give up all of my progress on Hexfinity. I will have 2 fuel, so I can get an Ultratech die and also an Ultratech 3 guaranteed. I think that's fine. So if I claim Solidarans, it will put this card back into discard before it does the reshuffle. So I think I just don't click anything other than, I guess I can do star-based stuff. Because if I click these, it triggers the reshuffle earlier. I can get a 27 card deck is what I can do. I think I want to get like 5 fleets so I can confront the adversary at last. Leaves me with a random die. Awkward. Awkward! I could. I could spend 3 science to roll an Ultratech die so I have a second die. That puts another card back into supply, although actually... Oh, there is a 3 in there. Okay. I guess I could instead do it this way. I'd probably just do a probe. I will take Improvisatron Collector. Thank you. I'm not studying. Move 3 Ultra Tech dice from the supply to the Horde, then the adversary gains this card as a bonus colony. Okay. They're also gaining a colony. Starburger, 1 diplomacy, 2 tech discs. So they're gonna gain so many tech discs. Yikes. But the good news is I can get another milestone. I don't have any 6s, but I can increase 3 of my dice by any amount. So I can definitely get 6s, like, reliably now. So... if I do mobile laboratories last, I can actually spend a fleet to study a location, I think, because I think this will trigger, and then I'll be able to do level 3 tech, I think. I'm gonna click this, and then move none, because I don't actually want to move it. I will gain 2 fleets. Hold on. Okay, I don't want to actually commit to that because I don't know that I can actually do that. I assume this is a visual bug. Yeah, okay, it was visual. Okay. Yeah, we can actually confront the adversary if I make these as well as this, right? Because then I can do this. I guess I have to be careful because I don't really have enough to be able to use all my techs, right? And also this. So maybe I don't calibrate that. So I'm using Starbase Disc for this. So never mind. I'm going to increase that to be a 6. Also, I'd rather spend 2 fleets. Maybe I'd rather spend 2 fleets. How do I deselect that die? I don't know. I guess I could... okay, have the deselected. I could do ice cream. Undo. How do I deselect it before like hitting undo though? Because it should just be a button to deselect it. I could gain 2 influence on ice cream. Actually, can I? Oh, I definitely don't have enough diplomacy dice. I don't have enough dice, period, for sending envoys. I think that's fine. Okay, well, the milestone triggered after the text, so I didn't actually get to choose to study, and that's fine. I will gain 2 influence there. All dice here must be the same value. I can actually do that this turn. I will probably do that so I can spend 3 influence to gain things back or something. I don't know. And then I have 3 dice left over. Study Flutara. Gain a fleet. I selected the thing to manually spend a science, and I proceed to not change my mind on what was selected, but I like having the choice. All right, we got to start confronting because, yeah, they have too many energies. Okay. Yeah, so I can't actually negotiate right now because I would need to gain the science off of ice cream. This is what happens when I upgrade. I don't have science anymore. I can get Federation level 4 though. Ice cream. Yeah, I didn't realize this was ice cream. I honestly thought it was like ice cream or something like that. I didn't realize this was a food pun. Apparently a lot of the colonies and stuff are food puns or something. Never caught on to that because I'm oblivious AF. Okay, so I'd love to be able to use inversion swords, but we don't even have any energy dice. Am I gonna study ice cream just so I can pay for the energy? If I'm doing that, maybe I should also pay the influence and I could just take that influence out. Okay. This allows me to confront, actually, which is nice. Spend a fleet to study ice cream, so I can pay for that. Is this just like straight up good enough? Actually, it is. No, it's not. I can't math. But I can just make that a 6 and it will work. So we can confront. So I have inversion storage, so actually... Oh, we have no more materials because of that, and I can't do any more spending, so... I can discard, or I can create an Ultra Tech die. I'm gonna create an Ultra Tech die because I feel like that's better. It does cost another die, but I can then increase it by any amount. So I can also do that if I so wanted. Doesn't super matter. Guess the question is, where do I want my dice to go? I get another 3 influence on Rice Twin, because apparently my rolls are so good for that, at least. It's a lot easier to have my dice be the same value than different values. Weird. Can't do anything with Hematib because I don't have 2 science. And... I can kind of do stuff here. As in I can do stuff here, actually? Wow, amazing. Do I want to do that? I don't really want to gain Flutara. I'd rather study it or something, I don't know. But then I have to use my techs because, like, I want 5 activated techs, but I don't really have a use for these techs. Don't forget the blue die. Yeah, it's gonna be upgraded. The question is, what am I gonna increase with Improvitron Collector? The answer is currently I only have 2 things, and I don't even care about this black die either. mean, I gotta keep the fleets up and the science up so I can reclaim stuff. I definitely need the fleets up so I can get the energy back, or sorry, materials back. Starbase discs are annoying, but because we are the scientists, we don't care about them as much. But if we do want to spend 7 tech discs, which I can do, I'll just pay 20 plus pips for it to get 6 tech discs, and then I can spend those plus a Starbase disc to get that. So I think I just don't do most of this. I'm gonna do that and stay there. Decrease that, and then I goes that. Yay. Okay, so that actually peels out some more dice from there, so I can devote more to the starbase. 2 and 2 is 4. Actually, they're discounted, so it's actually 1 and 1. I have 5 dice left over. So I can do this. They've claimed 2 more materials. Rude. Artisanal Ultra Tech is here. It's really good tech. So I want these. And I don't care about those or those, so that's fine. And I guess I could get 4 back and then get to Federation level 5, and then I get 6s off this, but I don't really need it. Okay. I'm definitely going for this, right? I should also confront the adversary in some capacity. Definitely on the front capacity. Which is a bit challenging with the dice that we have, but I can make ultra techs to bridge the gap. So like upgrading these will allow me to confront. In which case I'm not actually doing the unseen this turn, that's fine. Do I care about Ocean 1? Force Reactor gives me an energy 6. Kaleidoscopic Grid. Spend more fleets but roll more dice. I don't want that. So that gets me it. And if I want to get 2 more influence, I actually don't want to use those dice, but I can do this instead. Leaves me with 2 dice left over. don't want to study Ocean 1 because it discards dice. I guess I still have these. Again, visual look. I'm just gonna probe. And probe. They gain Miracle World. 3-3-3-3. So nice and even. And then they gained a new colony, so they're not even anymore. Okay. Gain those dice. Gain those dice. Deal with you. Things. I only have 2 texts left over right now. It's fine. Ubiquitous franchising is weird. Add 1 influence to a location, but if you are at the point where you can win the game, add 2 influence to 1 location instead. I guess that's actually pretty good. There's another tech though that adds an influence to each location though, is why I'm finding that funny. It's an encounter though, I guess is the difference. So do I have enough to confront? I don't think I do. Like if that's a 6 and that's a 6. And this were a 6, I'd be at 21. I guess I have more ultra text left. Maybe. Because I can convert some of these to ultra text. I only can do 2 though. Has to be 7. I can calibrate though. I do have remaining fleets. Okay. And 1 die to get 1 fleet. Which I will use to study Starburger. Okay. They're rolling so many dice. Didn't get that many though. Terra Inferma. Alright, 28 and 35 is rather hard, but also 35 and 14 fleets is rather hard. Do I want to... I have 0 tech discs. Do I want to pay for this just to get to Federation level 5? Then these are 6s. This is already a 6. I could also just win. Just winning might be fine. I can use these 4 techs with my Starbase tokens. Oh, but I can't use Improvatron Collector because I don't have enough fleets left. Well, that's awkward. Is this good enough? I don't think so. We need 10 more pips, of which we can get 7. But we could roll, actually, so. We knowingly do not have a 3. I mean, I guess I could discard this. Oh, but I can't even use these as Ultra Techs, actually, because I don't have enough dice. And it requires Starbase discs to get the Ultra Techs back. All right, well, I'm going to accept that I'm not confronting this turn. And so instead, I will get the Starbase, or sorry, the Tech discs back, and I will claim the Federation level. And now I can't use any techs. I can't do that. I can get 2 influence here in case I want to get the material, sorry, the diplomacy back next turn. I think everything else is going to be science and fleets. Although that is going to actually trigger a reshuffle if I do that, so maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I should, because I have so much science, actually. Holy crap. Holy crap. Alright, I'm going to gain fleets. As the other way to win is to flip the adversary and do things there. And I will gain more science anyway because I don't care. Look how thin the deck is. 13 cards. Aha! Rooted its Starbase to its previous class. It's okay. I have 20 science. I can upgrade it if I wanted. I guess the annoying thing is I don't have as many techs. I only have 5 techs. Alright, this one. This one, this one. And I can only get 1 Ultra Tech die. This is actually a pretty good roll. I mean, granted, some of those 6s were actually fixed, but if I increase these to 6s, I get the 35. And I can only get one more, but that's the only one I need. As then I just do these. Yay! Your civilization has fought off the threat and formed a federation that'll bring prosperity to your corner of the galaxy. Yes! We beat the Nibelwooers. Yay. Alright, well, half the stream was dedicated to reading and the other half was to the game, but I do have things I need to get done tonight, so I am going to have to end it here. Thank you all for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the stream. We're not going to do reading as much, but John said I could read the instructions on stream if I wanted. And we saw that there are still typos and stuff that need to be corrected in there, so, you know, it was certainly like big poop. Is that like a spoof of blank Mary Kill? In a sense, sorry, I just read it and had that realization. You were a sci-fi guy in every sports card breaker's room, but you hate the Toronto Maple Leafs, so you had to create an account to buy them in disguise. So you thought would be a cool name to make the breaker guy say out loud. You thought Blink Fig Ploop, but you mistyped and missed the L. And now you're poop. Poop. Cool. Anyway, yeah, so there's certainly corrections that can be made. If John or Jean-Marc are listening, I'm sorry, but I didn't make a list of the things. You can go back and watch my hour and 5 minutes of reading, which you probably aren't, but you only have so many hours in a day, and I get it. But there are certainly some things that can be fixed, some things that could be clarified, sentences that are a bit wonky. The biggest offender, I think, is the fact that resources, I guess I could pull this up, especially at the end for the civilization cards, it always says these are resources, and sometimes it also says that all of these are resources, but technically only these are resources in the language of the game. You're saying this is a resource in terms of like, this is how you accumulate dice. These are the resources your colony has, but I don't think technically that's what it's called. So you have to come up with a different name for that, I would suppose, so it's not confusing. Because this, you know, things can be confusing enough. Also, on the encounter cards, this is not an influence cost. There's no cost here. It's the threshold, but you called it cost twice and it annoyed me. There was also some other thing, like some text was duplicated on the same page. Relatively minor, really, but... All right, that's all I'm gonna say. Have a good night, everyone. Peace.